look, if you can use technology to your benefit, why not? So let's use it. Let's get to as many people as we can. So that's been nice. So thank you very much for, of course, choosing an interesting topic and for being part of the conference. And Francisco also, thank you very much. Of course, Francisco has come into some session, but didn't get too much time in that session. But Francisco, the topic that Alec has chosen, you said you were going to be part of that discussion. The restorative justice is after this session. So this is what Alec has chosen: labor disruption, workplace disputes, and organizational community stability. But Alec, I don't know whether I'm putting people on the spot now, because I think I've already asked people enough. Please tell us about the conference. That's the first thing.
Sure. So the topic, generally speaking, I think is, in some respects, it's a little bit common and even played out a little bit. We're all too familiar with the labor disruptions that we're seeing, primarily in America, but it certainly unfolds into other areas as well. But in some respects, I think there's new opportunities to discover how, dispute resolution as an entire field that keeps emerging can create opportunities for us to help address those, right? And, I'll talk a little bit about mediation, of course, ombuds, and how, they can come in. And that's interesting to me because, ombuds are still very widely misunderstood. I mean, mediation is too, but organizations are just starting to sort of experiment with this. And there's a lot of talk about it for, a new solution to an age-old problem. So that's what I'd like to talk about. And, I'm going to go in a pretty typical, problem solution and stakes kind of format here.
But the only thing, Alec, hasn't worked for me throughout the conference. Every time I've asked people to talk about the conference, no one talks about the conference. It always goes towards the topic. Why I've asked people about the conference is just to understand, did you watch some sessions? What did you think about whatever's happened? That's why I put that out. But maybe I just don't explain myself properly. So,
oh, that's okay. So yeah, about the conference, I've definitely tuned into a few of the sessions. Some of them I've only gotten 10 or 15 minutes. Other ones I got, the privilege of seeing the whole session for. Bernie Mayer did a great session a couple of weeks ago, and I've still been thinking about it. As a matter of fact, I put the session in the American Bar Association's one of the committee's digest, because I think that, the way that he unpacks, and you as well, the problem of polarization, because often it's treated as the cause, and in some ways it is the cause of a lot of things, right? Ezra Klein wrote a whole book on why we're polarized. But at the same time, as you and Bernie talked about, that really in some ways is just a symptom of more systemic issues, more societal changes. So I thought it was a fascinating topic, and I especially appreciated the opportunity to ask some questions in that one. So it's been a great conference so far. I always appreciate that it's in Ken Cloak's, or starting on Ken Cloak's birthday. That's always great.
So, it's been really nice. And Bernie Mayer, obviously, his aspect of neutrality by itself, those discussions we've had. I don't know whether you saw sessions of that symposium on neutrality and mediation. So he obviously gave the keynote address there also. So it's been really nice. And Francesco, how have you been watching some sessions about in the conference? Anything that you watched? Yeah.
I hear you very, very bad.
Have you seen any of the sessions of the conference? Have you?
No, I cannot. No, not possible to see other conferences.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So for Alex, so what you have to do is just a little bit about yourself, and then let's go into the topic.
Sure. So I live here in San Antonio, Texas. I work full-time as a professional neutral. A lot of my work right now is in real estate with the Bar of San Francisco. They're sending me a lot of real estate cases. They have this incredible program called Conflict Intervention Service. And I won't go too much into it, but the lay of the land basically is that the city and county are actually funding this mobile intervention service, right? So instead of in traditional fashion, how folks will come to mediation and is completely voluntary, we actually go to the conflict, and it's still voluntary. That's of course very important, but we don't wait for the problem to escalate. try litigation, fail, and then go, to mediation as a secondary option, right? Once you've expended enormous resources. So it's very preventative, it's intervention-like, and I think it's great stuff. So I do some real estate there, and I also do some workplace disputes. I'm an HR professional and a PMP certified project management. So, that's a little bit of my background and some of the disputes that I get involved in.
But have you been able to watch some of the sessions on ombuds that I've done? We've had lots of discussions on that. Have you seen any of those?
Yes, I did get to see one of them only briefly, but generally speaking, I mean, it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, because we've done, why I've had those discussions because like I was talking to Malu before this, for me, that organizational mediator position has to be created. Ombuds is too wide a range of things that they do. That's why one of the discussions was ombuds a Swiss Army knife ? So we had that discussion. So I think for me, that's one of the reasons why it did not take off, that concept, because there's too much happening there. But of course, let's get Francesco. Francesco, little bit about yourself. Yeah, about
Yes.
Francesco. Yes.
Okay, I am a mediator. I am to laborist lawyer. Well, I was a teacher from University of Burgos, from some years. Now my first work is mediator of labor conflict, labor collective conflicts.
But
But
let me I check with Alec. Alec, do you know Spanish? Do you have any idea of Spanish, Alec?
Some Spanish. I don't mind if you speak in Spanish.
Francesco, you can speak in Spanish. Alec will help you translate. You can speak in Spanish.
Speak in Spanish.
Yep.
Sí, no, creo que me estás preguntando cuál era mi perfil. Es que te oigo muy mal. ¿Sí?
Your Spanish is very good, at a little bit above my caliber, to be honest.
Simple Spanish. Francesco, simple Spanish. Not
Despacio, por favor.
Sí. Llego a oír mal la conversación. He entendido que me preguntaba Vikram que cuál era mi perfil.
So I think what he's talking about is doing conflict resolution work, generally speaking, but it's a little bit beyond my vernacular to understand that vocabulary. One day I will be able to mediate in Spanish. That day is not today.
Don't miss out on that opportunity. It's a huge world. The Spanish-speaking world is huge. I sometimes feel that I should have learned the language when I was younger, but we don't understand why people tell us to learn languages. But now you realize, okay, maybe it helps somewhere. So I think Francesco will teach us. Francesco, you can teach us Spanish. Next, no conferences now, everything stopped. Only now we have to learn Spanish. That is the target now.
Okay.
Yes, Alec, please, your topic, your show.
Sure. And Francisco, I invite you to participate in this. I certainly am curious about your insights and your experiences as well. So yeah, I'll just jump right into it. The problem, solution, and what's at stake here. The state of work now and how post-pandemic changes have impacted work and ultimately why it matters is something that's deeply fascinating, because we have seen the labor market get really shaken up. We have seen, ultimately the struggle for talent, organizations putting out 2 jobs for every 1 candidate, right? So there's this struggle for talent. And at the same time, the talent that's acquired by organizations on this macro scale, it's especially challenging because there's quiet quitting happening. There's job hopping happening, right? So even when you get an employee, you're not really sure if they're going to stick around for more than a few years, sometimes if even that, right? And it's estimated that I think it's $360 million or billion dollars. I'm sorry, $360 billion is what conflicts cost organizations around the world. I mean, just almost an unfathomable number. So we're seeing this at the broad scale. Those are some of the symptoms. Now, a little bit more specifically, employees, so something like 85% of employees experience conflict somewhere around 2.5, 3 hours per week, right? So you're seeing this at the organizational level. HR is having to shell out better compensation packages, higher salaries, more fringe benefits like mental health days. And that's creating disparities, right? It's creating, situations where more loyal, quote unquote, loyal employees aren't necessarily being, compensated or appreciated for their loyalty, right? And so it's kind of created a self-reinforcing cycle. And ultimately, this is all ironic because while HR is shelling out this money to acquire employees, so many of those employees are distrustful of human resources and the organizations generally, right? I had a client tell me one time, human resources is for the corporation, not the employee. That's why I don't go to HR. That's why even when, another employee told me I was fired for, ultimately something that wasn't my fault, it was wrongful termination. And HR asked me to sign documents displacing the blame onto me so that they could limit their liability, right? And that particular client, they were an SBA loan agent, and they lost half of their department. So the fear was real for this organization, losing people and being afraid that in somewhere along the lines, they made a misstep and they were going to get sued for it, right? So these are some of the problems that we're seeing. I think personally, from the research that I've done, from the interviews that I've done, a lot of these difficulties stem from generational differences. Now, I certainly, I think about Ken Cloak's insights here and how he said, differences, diversity will create differences, and that's fine, right? Differences don't have to be a problem, but if we're not careful, our differences will become disputes, right? And our disputes will become entrenched conflicts and so on and so on. It escalates. So, we're now in a situation where we have 5 generations in the workforce, right? The silent generation all the way up to the newest Gen Z. I think it's the silent generation is late 70s and 80s, and Gen Z is like, they're teenagers, some of them, right? But some of them have their degrees and they're in their entry-level positions. So you have these differences in workplace attitudes and cultures and all these different things among people all in one place, just trying to figure it out, right? So I certainly think that the generations set the stage for conflict, but they themselves are not enough to explain these differences, because we've always, had generations, one going out, one coming in, and the other one's in between. So why now, right? Why are we seeing, sure, there's more differences, but why are we really seeing so many differences become conflicts, right? And that's where a lot of my research has kind of focused on, right? And so I think, and Francisco, I'm curious about your experience, and Vikram, your experience as well. But one of the things that I come across very often is a difference in work ethic and the perception of how that matters, right? So I'll talk to HR, senior folks, C-suite, and they'll tell me, oh, yes, of course, bringing in the new generation, training that talent through job enlargement or job enrichment. That's how you grow your organization. That's how you grow talent. That's how you that's how you demonstrate servant leadership, right? So these are great things and we should do them. At the same time, I talk to younger generations, and so many of them are skeptical about that. They say, well, this is more work without extra pay. That's exploitation.
Please.
I think that's ironic. There's a total disconnect there.
Let's get Francisco. Can you please tell Francisco, Alec is going to try and tell you in Spanish Francisco, please. Alec, whatever simple Spanish, please tell him what the question for him will be. His experience.
Un trabajador muy difícil, porque differences. ¿Cómo se dice differences? Right?
Defensa, sí, defenderse Sí.
It's
difficult to the workers to defend in the labor work.
Mucho differences, right? Create, let's see. I don't know the word for diversity.
What we'll do is we'll use Google Translate at some point of time. We'll get you in, Francisco. We'll definitely get you in. I'll try and do it on Google Translate. Yeah.
No problem.
But if there's something that you want to start with, Francisco, you can please. You've looked at the topic. Anything that you want to, something that you want to say for the topic?
Yes, when you said me to speak about labor distributions, I thought speak about mediations and the restorative justice. They are terms very interesting. They are different. I would like to focus my intervention on the new trends.
On restorative justice. On restorative justice, is it? On restorative justice, the next session, Francisco. That's the next session. Then you can come in for that. You wanted to discuss this one, is it? This session you wanted to attend.
Oh, yes, but it's in labor. I want to speak about this, but in labor, in labor disruptions.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Please.
It is important to address this new perspective as both mediations and restorative justice offer alternative and effective approaches to conflict resolutions, and they share common points that can effectively complement each other in the workplace. This is the main circumstance. Mediations and restorative justice are complementary approaches that share several common points and can be effectively applied in the real labor relations. Both perspectives emphasize the activity participations of the parties involved in the conflict. Promoting open communication and constructive dialogue. Mediation is based on the intervention of a neutral third party, the mediator, who facilitates the negotiation process between the conflict parties. Its objective is to assist the parties in reaching a mutually satisfactory agreement, taking into account the interests and needs. Mediators encourage collaborative decision-making and the search for win-win solutions. On the other hand, restorative justice focuses on repairing the harm caused by the conflict and restoring relationships between the parties. This responsibility, accountability, and repairing the harm caused. Unlike traditional approaches to conflict resolutions that focus on punitions, offender restorative justice with mutual understanding and healing of damaged relationships. In the workplace, the combinations of mediators and restorative justice can generate significant benefits. Both approaches primarily aim at maintaining future relationships between the parties involved in labor conflict by promoting open communication and dialogue of a conducive space is created for mutual understanding, empathy, and collaborative problem solving. Mediations allow the parties to express their concerns and perspectives, working together to find mutually acceptable solutions. Additionally, having a neutral mediator ensures an impartial and equitable process. This contributes to reduce adversity and preventing the escalation of conflict, thus preserving long-term labor relationships. Restorative justice, on the other hand, provides an opportunity to address the emotional and relational consequences of the conflict. It provides framework for the parties to reflect on the path of their actions, acknowledge the harm causes, and take the step to repair it. This strengthens trust and cooperation in the workplace, laying the foundation of better coexistence and future relations. In conclusions, mediation and restorative justice are complementary approaches that intervene in the resolutions of labor conflicts. Their combined applications offer significant benefits, such as promoting effective communications, building healthy labor relationships, and preventing future conflicts. I want, there are a lot of application examples. We can let's analyze some real cases in which this combines approach about demonstrate our the effectiveness. For example, conflict between colleagues, salary disputes, restructuring of work terms, breach of labor contracts, collective negotiation, and strikes. While due to the time constraints, I would like to focus on a topic of direct importance and significance in the current labor world, which is workplace harassment. It's okay?
Sure, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
And if times allow, really discuss other situations as well. I would like to make a special mention of workplace harassment issues due to their significance. It is a complex and controversial topic, and I am aware that many voices claim that mediation is not possible in situations of violence. We must be clear from the outset that mediation focuses on communications, mutual understanding, and collaborative problem solving, while restorative justice aims to repair the harm causes and empower the affected persons in the resolution process. My thesis is that both approaches are complementary and can be applied flexibly depending on the circumstances and specific needs to each case. I believe it is appropriate to differentiate between two situations at this point. Firstly, situations where one party perceives it is a harassment, but is not. For example, we are referring to misunderstanding often generated by poor communication or situations on misuse of power. And secondly, situations that actually involve harassment behavior. In situations of misunderstanding or conflict generated by poor communication or inappropriate exercise of power, which make one party perceive it is a harassment, mediation is undoubtedly a highly effective tool. Mediation provides a neutral space where the parties involved can discuss and clarify misunderstanding. The mediators facilitate dialogue, promote active listening, and help the parties understand what has happened and find mutually satisfactory solutions. The goal is to identify the facts, points of conflict, understand each party's perspective, and seek avenues of understanding and collaboration. Mediations allows addressing the problem at its early stage, preventing it from escalating into a harassment situation. The mediator can facilitate communication between the parties, allowing the affected person to express their experience and concerns, and providing the responsible person with an opportunity to reflect on their behavior and take corrective measures. Remember, mediation seeks to restore trust and build relationships based on mutual respect, equal conditions. However, restorative justice can also play an important role in this case. Firstly, restorative justice seeks to give voice in the affected person and promote their active participations in the conflict resolution process. Instead of imposing external solutions, it aims to provide the parties involved in the conflict with the opportunity to express their concern, feelings, and needs. This allows the affected person to share the emotional impact the situation has had of them, promoting their healing and power. On the other hand, through dialogue and reflection process, the other party is given the opportunity to recognize and take responsibility for their behavior, understanding the harm causes of the affected person. This facilitates the possibility of repair and the adoption of corrective measures to prevent the situation from recurring in the future. In the context of the restorative justice, different practices and approaches can be employed, such as restorative circles, reparative conference, etc. These tools allow the parties involved to come together in a safe and confidential space facilitated by an impartial third party, with the goal of dialoguing, understanding, and seeking solutions that repair that harm causes and restorative level relationships. In summary, in this case, restorative justice, complementing mediation, provides an approach that promotes healing, active participation of the parties, and individual responsibility. By combining both perspectives, the aim is to address misunderstanding and instance of misuse of power from a broader perspective, promoting justice, reparation, and the constructions of healthy and respectful labor relations.
Perfect. Yeah. Good. No, what we'll do is Alec also, please also look at this aspect that Francisco has discussed. So we'll go to Alec. He'll just go through, because he had something in mind that he wanted to tell us. What you're saying is important. He'll also maybe address some of that in what he was saying, because he's Alec.
I'm very glad that you brought up Francisco. I think the way that you phrased it was, mediation and restorative justice as an opportunity to reflect on behaviors. Yes. And to take accountability to some extent for those behaviors. So one of the missed opportunities in workplace disputes is exactly that, I think, right? Because here's what happens, whereas we should be striving for this kind of situation that you're talking about, Francisco. So what happens is a wrong gets done, right? Or some perception of wrong happens. Somebody makes a comment about age, or they make a joke that was maybe in bad taste, maybe it was on the fence, or maybe it was a joke that only one person took the wrong way, right? But that's enough to create harm. Now, rather than coming together and discussing, okay, the way you would in an interpersonal trusting relationship, right? A close relationship. Did I say something that offended you? Okay, well, help me understand how that impacted you, right? Help me fill in the missing context about what it is in your life experience, or from your generation, or from your culture, your family, whatever, that I'm not understanding, that would have that joke land the wrong way, right? We don't do that because there's a fear, because if somebody takes partial accountability for something, then what it does, especially in a workplace situation that's highly, there's high liability for litigation. Partial accountability creates the opportunity for full culpability, right? If I get you to admit that you said something and you acknowledge the impact of this, then you've created the grounds for me to pursue you further with litigation. The average, discrimination lawsuit is $160,000, right? And so while I don't want to put forth the idea that a settlement check is the only thing that somebody would be after, or that things are said in poor taste intentionally, right? I wouldn't dismiss those things. But at the same time, I certainly think that there's many situations in which, employees from different cultures, different backgrounds, different generations are simply experiencing their differences in a moment of difference. And what they have is an opportunity to create understanding, like you were talking about. create shared understanding, acknowledge their differences, see how they can create a new understanding together, right? Co-create that culture, if you will. But instead of doing that, accountability is denied because, you know, they want to prevent full culpability, lawsuits, all of that kind of stuff, right? So it becomes a situation in which we can go towards each other with things like mediation and restorative justice, or we can go away from each other for fears of litigation and so forth, right? So I just want to underscore that opportunity for reflection on behavior is what makes all of that possible. We could have more of it in the workplace, but we don't see enough of it.
But more important, what you were going to talk about, I think I wanted to understand the aspect of the community stability and all that you wanted to put out. Something specific you wanted to say there?
Right. So let me jump to the community stability and work my way backwards, right? You know, in a nutshell, economic prosperity drives broader prosperity, right? Communities cannot prosper much without generally prospering economically. And economically, conflicts are already causing major disruptions, right? I mentioned the $360 billion. So conflicts are already having this economic impact to organizations, and we can see those impacts. Some of those impacts are systemic, which means that, you know, their effects will be more profound, more long-lasting. And so, you know, we're seeing those things, right? Now, I think it's important to unpack GDP a little bit here, right? Gross domestic product. Typically, GDP is taken to be the top indicator of economic prosperity, right? You know a community is doing good, classic economics says, when its GDP is really high, right? There's a lot of activity happening, right? But the problem with that is it encourages a myopic view of the conditions that sustain an economy and the communities, and ultimately the organizations as kind of the nexus, right, of economics and communities. If we focus just on GDP, we're missing the forest for the trees, right? We're looking simply at all this activity, buzzing, and we're saying, oh, that's a good thing, right? That's good because people have jobs, they have things to do. Is it in the right direction? Are they being efficient? Those are questions that GDP just doesn't measure, right? And so, you know, the mere act of creating surplus drives higher GDP rather than creating better quality or more resilient products and services, and opting for products and services that enable more resilience, right? So we don't see that striving for resilience when we're so focused on economic GDP, right? So to really put my finger on it, you know, when a global economy optimizes for speed, scale, efficiency rather than resilience, it becomes increasingly vulnerable to the risks in a world that is increasingly volatile, right? So I just talked about quiet quitting. I just talked about, you know, job hopping and employees switching jobs and tight labor markets in which organizations are having to cut into their bottom line just to get the labor to keep themselves going, right? And why is all of this happening? In my opinion, because we're focusing too much on GDP, which is to say activities, and we're not focusing enough on the quality of those activities, the direction that those activities are in. And so one of the things that we miss, coming back to Francisco's point, is we miss opportunities to create and build better cultures, which are ultimately more resilient and ultimately make the organizations and their communities more resilient, because we don't create more situations and hold space wherein accountability can happen. So where does mediation come into all of this? The confidentiality, right? And the self-determination. So confidentiality removes a person's opportunity to weaponize accountability, right, for the sake of litigation. So if Francisco and I had an exchange like this, Francisco felt, you know, or I'll actually turn the other way around. I felt, insulted or offended in some way. And Francisco, has a great heart. He wants to take accountability. He wants to apologize. He wants to understand, but he's not going to, maybe, right? Because of the fear of litigation, the fear of losing his job, the fear of any of these things. And so that's validated by the fact that, well, if we were not in mediation, I could do those things. I could weaponize that information. Mediation insulates from those kinds of fears with the confidentiality agreement, right? What happens in mediation stays in mediation. And number two, with self-determination. So if Francisco doesn't genuinely understand the way in which I was offended, or the way that the joke, mislanded on me, right? Then he's not going to apologize, because that's not authentic. So he's at the center of that self-determined decision to apologize and take accountability. And so in that respect, anything that happens in mediation, be it, milestones or simple, small baby steps, it is genuine, it is authentic, it is from the people in those positions, right? And so that's how I think you can build up accountability spaces, which helps you to rebuild organizations, right? With the problem of turnover and culture. And if you can stabilize workplaces, ultimately you can stabilize communities, right? Because again, this all ties back to economic prosperity. If you can't get the cornerstone of economics down, you don't have a community that's very stable for very long.
So one is the community, the organization, the community, and then the larger community. Both benefit from it. Both benefit from it. So the concept being that people definitely want to connect with each other, but the system that has been created otherwise, you don't let people connect because of whatever the repercussions of them actually putting out what they really feel. That opportunity is not there, and risks involved in even expressing that. So in this space, you can connect as human beings, and maybe you'll be able to understand each other and that part of it. Francisco, did you get that? What he said?
Only I want to say that we are nowadays the relations, the labor relations are very difficult, are changing, and I think the mediations and other negotiations are very important tools. We must to know to work with it. It's only as is my impression.
But what I was thinking was, Alec, is that if you actually go to Google Translate and open that and just talk into Google Translate, even that would help, Francisco. I don't know. We've tried that, haven't you? I do that.
Let's give it a go. I'm game for it.
Yeah, because I just feel that language should not be a reason for people not to participate in the discussion. So that part of it, I do that. I mean, look, what happens is that, yes, it'll get a few things wrong maybe, but the gist of it is understood. This is what I sent the link. You can click this link also. But up till then, let me tell you that Anna Scheller has said, as a baby boomer and business owner, it is dizzying to work with all the differences, which is to your point if you were talking about earlier. So Francisco, you also have to do the same thing. You also have to click this link. And when you have to talk, you share the screen, you talk in Spanish, we'll understand. When Alec wants to talk, and I understand both languages, so I'm okay.
Yes, it's
difficult. And I won't talk. It's okay.
It's difficult. It's difficult.
No, it's not difficult. Let me show you. Let me try it. It's not difficult at all. It's very easy. And it's the only way we have right now, because there are ways to do it on Zoom. Let me try. What he's saying is that the opportunity for people to connect with each other when they want to doesn't come because the adversarial system doesn't really allow that. You need a space where people can understand each other, all be through restorative justice or just a conversation. So mediation in that sense gives them that space. I'll correct it. I'll correct it. I'll correct it. I'll correct it. Okay. What? I can't say Alec because he won't understand Alec. The Google Translate then gives some sort of thing.
Yes, I agree with it. The mediation is an opportunity.
Yeah.
In this case, relations are very, very difficult sometimes.
You want to, you can speak in Spanish. Francisco, open Google Translate, speak in Spanish, because your thoughts will come out so much better. But
yes,
speak slowly. Spanish slowly, because Google Translate also is learning from you.
Ahora,
just click that link, open it, just speak into it, share the screen. Let's get all, we'll all learn all languages.
No, it's not permitted to me with this navigator, say to me.
Why? What does it say?
No permit the navigator, not permit to speak in with translators Google.
That is because the mic might not have accepted the mic. Well, let me show you. I'll just show you. What you have to do is you have to click one sec. You click here. You click on this button. Is there a mic showing here?
Yes.
Just click on this button. You see, it says whether you can allow it and which mic to use.
No permit.
Okay.
See?
No problem. If it doesn't, then it's you haven't given it permission to use that. Doesn't matter. We get that later. We understand you. We understand you. We understand you. Not a problem. So okay. So that's what. But tell me, Alec, what do you think of this organizational mediator versus organizational ombuds? Because of course you were not part of that discussion. But I really want to put it out there that this is something which needs to be created, and I mean, that's what I want to create with these organizational mediation circles. So what are your thoughts on how that will work and what issues you think can come in?
Yeah, so let me share my screen here and give it a go.
You also don't have permission. You guys have not given. You guys don't give permission. You don't want to give permission easily.
I know, right? We're retaining our autonomy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's simply not supported on this browser.
For me, it's impossible. I can't.
Let me open a different browser.
Yeah.
And I'll give it a go.
Which browser is this?
So I was using Firefox. Let me open
okay,
on
okay.
Translate. Okay.
All the security in the world you guys need.
All right. So let me try that one more time.
So maybe you also, Francisco, what browser do you use? Which browser are you using? Are you using Chrome or something else? Yeah, now you've got it.
I'm using Google
Chrome.
Google.
Okay, now you can. Alec is going to speak.
Oh, okay.
Not bad. It can hear me also, so we don't need to keep changing.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, great.
Perfect.
So I will keep this up, and Francisco can talk. We can all talk.
Only thing you'll have to reverse when Francisco talks. You'll have to just go there and reverse from Spanish to English. That top button
right
there.
Yeah. Good call. Okay.
Francisco, don't speak when it's on English, okay? It won't understand what you're saying. Yes, Alec, you just go into the mic and let's start. Let's go. You have to just click the mic.
Okay, so I think it's important to consider the differences between ombuds and mediators when handling workplace disputes. I take your point, Vikram, that ombuds is very broad. They have a lot of functions, and it can get very, I mean, this is my perception, but it can get very unfocused, perhaps. Or, perhaps the ombud is great at what they do, but because it's so broad, employees don't exactly have a clear grasp on what the ombud does and how they can benefit, right? That's a common problem in conflict resolution. People ask me all the time, so what is that and how does it benefit me, right? Because I can appear in so many places, right? landlord tenant all the way to workplace to civil construction, right? How are these things all connected, and how do you show up? So it's a common problem. I also think it's important to acknowledge, there certainly are similarities between the two, right? Impartiality, obviously, informality. Well, to a degree, mediation is informal, and it has certain protections, right? But in my understanding, it's protected primarily by contract law and by state law, whereas the impartiality or the informality, sorry, of the ombud is more informal, right? The ombud can't even keep track of the visitors that they have come in. There can be no record. So it's even more informal, and I think that makes a very big difference. And talking about the protections of anonymity, the ombud's visitors, or the ombud role in general and their interactions are protected, from my understanding, by federal law. So in addition to state and contract law, right? And so I think the independence is also super important because, well, and actually, let's see if it keeps extending here on the Google Translate. But the independence is important. This is something that I have struggled with to offer services to organizations, right? Because if I have an employee and an employer, and there's a case of wrongful termination, for example, what I want to do is approach the business probably from a financial perspective because they have most of the funding, right? So it makes sense to write this off as a business expense. But from an impartiality and a professional standpoint, it does not make sense to receive most or all of your funding from one side. There is clearly, that creates the opportunity for perceiving the mediator as not impartial, right? And so you compromise those standards to some degree. Now, I think one of the things that you can do is create a program where the mediator and the mediation services are paid up front in a kind of potluck style, right? The mediator pays into it like Social Security, and the employer pays into it like Social Security, and it's right down the middle. And whenever they go to use the mediation service, it is independent, right? Because you're using an outside organization consulting. It's impartial, and you can rely on that because the costs are down the middle. And it is obviously informal, not as informal as an ombud. But so there are benefits to this.
No, but you picked up a very important point, this aspect of who's paying. So how I'm looking at it in terms of the mediation circle, you've given me a good thought on that whoever wants to be part of that mediation circle can contribute a certain amount. And you have a person that everyone trusts, because trust is the major aspect here. So you get that kind of a person available to them. And from that perspective, this doesn't come in about the fact that this is the organization's person. It's everyone's person. And ultimately, Alec, it's going to be about the person. It's going to be trust in the person, not the concept of a mediator. It's Alec. Okay, let's go to Alec. That's the kind of thing which will be created, because what happens is sometimes in discussions, because you talk about it from an ombud's perspective, but it is not the office. It's the person who's in the office. Because there is someone, Daniela, who's in the Georgetown University, and she's the ombuds there. And she was, of course, part of the discussions. And she wasn't into the ombuds thing at all. But she was chosen to be an ombuds. And I keep telling her, it's because the person you are, the university understood you for that role. So I think that's what people will understand, that people will understand who that individual is. They will trust that person. And around it, you'll get people who want to use it, they will benefit from it. Other people will want to come into it. So I think you've given me a really good thought on this. This is why this discussion is important, that it's a circle where the organization and the people working in the organization are all part of it. It's not that this one is the one who's paying, so it's something us against them kind of thing. So good. I think that's a good point. Yes, Francisco, if you want to speak, you have to tell Alec, he'll reverse that. He'll reverse it, and then you can start speaking. This is great, Alec. What else you want? So, okay, so you want to stop? Just one sec, Francisco. Just one sec. No, you can actually reverse it also.
Ahora?
Yeah.
Sí.
Yeah.
Bueno, yo lo que he querido entender, o lo que quiero decir es que realmente para mí son dos figuras muy diferentes. Primero porque yo creo que el mediador debe ser una persona totalmente ajena al conflicto y a las partes. En el momento en que el mediador tiene algún tipo de relación, que podría ser a veces el caso, ¿no?, de las organizaciones con el ombudsman, quiebra o puede quebrar un tanto ciertos principios de la mediación. Quizás no en la realidad, porque el mediador, perdón, el ombudsman podría ser realmente una persona imparcial, pero es complicado verlo desde fuera. No sé si llego a explicar. En España estamos desarrollando ahora lo que son los protocolos de mediación en el acoso en las empresas. Muchas empresas nombran un mediador interno. Es decir, dentro, por ejemplo, del departamento de los recursos humanos. Yo creo que
It is
eso es...
thinking. Alec, it was thinking. It does come out with the output. It just takes some time for it to think and what you're saying. So you don't have to stop it. It'll pick it up. Yes, Francisco.
Sí, perdón.
Speak. Yeah.
Ah, no, decía eso, ¿no? Que creo que es un error nombrar a alguien interno. Y de esa misma forma se pueden llegar a confundir también las figuras a veces, o crear confusión, la figura del ombudsman con un mediador. Yo creo que son totalmente diferentes, hacen papeles diferentes, pueden hacer papeles complementarios en un momento determinado. Pero no sé cómo lo ve Alec, pero yo creo que no es conveniente mezclar esas figuras como tal.
Okay. It takes its time. I think it'll come. If you stop it, it'll take its time and it'll come. It takes, sometimes it does happen, maybe where it's processing it somewhere, but we've got the point, I think, to a certain extent. So I think this is,
Very
I think,
interesting to know it's different in Spain.
Yes. It's different.
Yeah. So Paulo is also with us. Paulo, you can come and say hi to us. You can also join the conversation if you want. But this is, I think, something which works in both ways. What aspect that you are talking about, community, Francisco is talking about restorative justice, and a space available, which is everyone's space. So my mediation circle fits in every way.
Brilliant.
Hi, Paulo.
Hello, guys.
What we are doing is we've called in Google Translate as our official translator, and it has helped us quite a bit. So if you want to speak in Italian or any other language, we have all options available today. We have.
Oh, amazing! I want to learn how to do that.
Yes, we will.
I'll try
Alec
my
is going
English.
to show us. Alec is going to anyway show us anyway, because Francisco might want to just conclude. Alec, you want to put it up and let Francisco conclude what? Okay, Francisco, 1 minute. Just one conclusion kind of thing that you have to give. So.
Listos.
Yes, Francisco. You want to conclude? Right. Francisco, you have to tell us your last words, not your last words in life, but just last words for the session, what you want to conclude on. Anything? Or you don't have to reverse it. I'll have to tell him in English. I think you just have to reverse that button on top. You don't have to. You have to go to the center. There's a button in the center. You just have to reverse that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so Francisco, any last words to conclude your thoughts on the presentation?
Pedir perdón
one second. We have to just reverse. Yeah. We have to go.
Pedir primero perdón por mi dificultad en la comunicación. creo que es muy importante realmente transmitir lo que hemos hecho, transmitir lo que cada figura es. Las diferencias entre las figuras es importante, no podemos confundir unas con otras, pero también es cierto que, como yo antes decía, en referente a la justicia restaurativa y la mediación, todo confluye y debemos aprovechar las sinergias de todas estas figuras y ir evolucionando. Es decir, lo importante es que la figura del mediador en el futuro evolucione, como puede evolucionar la figura del ombudsman. Al final, las situaciones de conflicto son diferentes todas y cada una va a requerir unas herramientas particulares, y si sabemos combinar sinergias, seguro que llegamos a dar una muy buena solución de futuro a los conflictos.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts. Yes, Alec, now you'll have to just reverse and give us your concluding remarks.
So thank you just to all of you for being here and engaging in this thoughtful dialogue. I would propose a few questions, but before I get to those questions, I just want to underscore that there is enormous capacity to do this work. The field is burgeoning with professionals. We're having schools and programs open up. Programs are, or universities and organizations are trying it, and they're having great success and measured success. So the business case is there. The dollars will get spent regardless. The question is whether spending will be foolish or wise, right? Dispute resolution can shepherd preventative and restorative responses rather than those that are merely reactionary, punitive. They spend money and ultimately they don't make people feel any better. They don't restore trust. And so they can't really address the issues of culture and those drivers behind quiet quitting and things of that sort. I do think that there is the capacity for dispute resolution to lay the groundwork for individualized interest-based agreements. I can speak more about individual accountability plans, something that Mosaic offers as a service at some other point. But the key questions that we have to ask ourselves are we going to expect all of these supports and methods to be procured downstream and ad hoc, right? And calling 911 once there's a fire? And are we going to expect individuals to bear the bulk of the cost, burdening themselves rather than integrating the costs and benefits into the organization itself on a systematic level? Those are, I think, the key questions that we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah. And for me, all the answers lie in the mediation circle. That's one. But I think what we also have to discuss, which we haven't, is the use of artificial intelligence, which I've tried to do in this conference quite a bit, because you do have access, everyone has access to that. Can that be your first port of call? And only then do you go somewhere else, because all these aspects of confidentiality and of course informality and everything gets taken care of there. Can we use it a lot more? And what are the issues that are coming up? And can that chat happen at the first instance? Will people be open to it? Let's also look at that. I mean, I'm thinking of that as an opportunity for us today when we have that developing, how you can make it mediator GPT. Today, this conference thing has been that terminology. Mediator GPT is what we need to develop on. So thank you very much, Alec, Francisco. This is just the start of a discussion. Definitely we'll have this conversation as we go along. So thank you very much. And let me, at this point of time, just shut this session. We'll get into Paulo's session. Paulo, this is like a